have you registered to vote? And so most people, even if they have, I mean, they just want to keep going because they don't want to talk about it. And that's why we devised that way of saying, would you like to update your voter registration information? Then if they haven't voted, then they feel free to, I mean, if they haven't registered, they feel free to ask questions about information about it. And so we draw in so many more people that way.
Kathy?
I was going to mention also that every time I've gone out, even on a voter drive, to have something that you can put in people's hands, like even like a little card that says when the elections are, and just, it's almost like having a, you know, a prop, you know, having something that's not asking for money, and you're not, you know, you're not trying to make them join your group. You're just wanting to get information in them and to them, and it just kind of makes it where you're not cold calling. So it's not such an abrupt cold call, because I think people do kind of, they want to just keep walking and they do not want to be bothered. But if you smile and say, you know, did you know there's election coming up? You know, it's, I don't know. That's kind of, people who've been at drives with me will know that I'm not hesitant.
That's true. Kathy, can you hear me?
Our league made what we call rack cards, which are like, you take an 8.5 by 11 page and you make 3 across in columns with information on both sides about the league and about voter restoration rights. And another thing we did was we made like bookmark size. So those are like on the table, and you always have a bowl of candy too, some kind of candy. So people feel, we say, oh, would you like some candy? And then they get some candy, and then they start asking questions. What are you doing? What is the League of Women Voters? So a lot of times the candy is a good way to draw people in.
That's a great suggestion, Janine. I think I've got the, just to let everybody know, I've got the YouTube, unlisted YouTube video going, and Jean is recording, and I'm handing this off to Dana this morning, and then Becky will pick it up when she's done. So thank you guys for joining us again. And this will be the second part. Thank you.
Kathy?
Yes.
And just one quick comment about do you want to update your voter registration? With some of the VRR folks, that doesn't work, because I've had a couple, when you ask them that, they kind of shake their head and say no, because they think they can't vote. And so if you think for some reason it has to do with VRR, that question may not get us where we need to go. Because I've had, like I say, I've had a couple that said, no, I can't vote. And usually when you say that, then I'll try to pull them aside and ask if it's because of felony and try to explain to them. But if you just ask the question, do you need to update your voter registration? Sometimes they'll say no, because they think they can't vote.
We say voter registration information. And when you put that word information in there, it makes all the difference, because then they feel free to ask you questions. They say, well, I can't vote when you say that. But if you just say voter registration, then they keep walking.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out that one of the things with this VRR team, that's a network, everybody in the league is welcome to join this. One of the things we like to do also is to have like regular tag ups where like Brian is taking over for me now that I'm, you know, moved up into different position. And so Brian is now going to take my position as far as coordinating the VRR team. And one of the things that, you know, it's really helpful for us to all get on the phone together and just talk about maybe things about how to communicate, or if there's any issues. So that's great. Thank you, Brian. All right, Dana, you can.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dana Ellis. I know several of you on the call. I don't know you all. I'm in Birmingham with the League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham. Kathy has another engagement today, so she's asked me to kind of MC, for want of a better word. But the real star of today is Becky Laurent. And I'm looking at the list, or looking at the screen. I think a lot of you, if not all, were on the call last night. If there is anyone who's attending for the first time today, we'll be starting, with the second half of the presentation. Do not worry, because an email will go out to everybody who registered for this that will have the recordings from last night and today, as well as the PowerPoint slides. So with no further ado, let me turn it over to Becky, who will continue part 2 of the training.
And I should also introduce myself, which I did not do last night. I'm also a member of the Birmingham League, and what I'm presenting last night and today is really comes from input from more experienced members of the VRR team. So let me start sharing my screen here. Oh, I don't think I have screen sharing enabled.
Becky, I'm trying to make you co-host. I think Kathy has to do that.
I just made her screen sharing where she can do that.
Okay. And are we seeing the right view of it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So last night we talked about the basic tools for voter rights restoration. And then we just reviewed all the different ways that people can register. And then we did a deep dive into Alacourt. And as Kathy and Dana mentioned, that will be available online. And today we'll start with applying for a certificate of eligibility to register to vote. And this comes up if somebody does have a disqualifying felony. So our next example is Kimberly. She has no federal or out-of-state convictions, and she wasn't sure of the degree of her theft of property conviction. So we looked up her record on Alacourt. And when we search in Alacourt, we find a theft of property second charge. And when we click through to charges and dispositions, we find a guilty plea. We see that both theft of property second degree and section 13A84 are found on our list of disqualifying felonies. And remember, if there's any doubt, rely on the statute number, which is referred to as cite in Alacourt. We pull out our CLC flowchart from the activist manual to see what to tell Kimberly about regaining her right to vote. So we did see she had a disqualifying conviction. The answer to that is yes. And now we have a series of 4 questions that we have to explore. So because Kimberly has a disqualifying conviction, she can't register to vote immediately like Mike could, but she might meet these 4 requirements to get a certificate of eligibility to register to vote from the Alabama Bureau of Pardons and Paroles. If she receives a certificate, she can present it to her local board of registrars and proceed to register to vote. And we'll cover that process in more detail below. Our text flow script has us start with the last item in the serve requirements list. So we ask Kimberly if she's completed her sentence, including pardon and parole, and she says yes.
Becky, excuse me, could you slide your screen up just a little bit? The bottom of it is being cut off.
I'm in full screen. Okay. So is everybody else having that issue? Let me see what
I can see about half of the yellow or part of the yellow area, but not all of it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, it was just a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so what are you seeing right now? Are you seeing just the slide, or are you seeing the outline view?
The outline view also, but we can see all of the slides.
Let me try one more time.
It's not a big deal. It's just half of that last sentence that was cut off.
And I need to swap my screens, is that right? So right now, are y'all seeing presenter view or are you seeing just the slide?
I am seeing 2 slides or 2 views plus the speaker.
Okay, let me try and switch that. Do you have the same issue now where the yellow is cut off?
Yes.
That is so interesting. Well, I am going to go back to presenter view, and that way you'll be able to see the whole slide.
Thank you.
You know, it's just entertaining how much this can vary from one session to another.
Every
So
time.
now you're seeing the whole slide?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, and now I need to minimize my little Zoom window so I can find the text here. Let's see. Okay. So we've already talked about the fact that she has completed her sentence. And if you go into Alacourt and you look for that information, don't be concerned if it's inconsistent with what we see in Alacourt, because the default entry is no for sentence requirements completed, and it's rarely updated. So we are better off relying on what Kimberly tells us about sentence completion. If Kimberly has been convicted of one of the very serious felonies known as ineligible convictions or pardon-only felonies, she won't be eligible for a serve. However, she's told us that she has no federal or out-of-state convictions, and we've seen that her only Alabama conviction is for theft of property too, which doesn't appear in this list of ineligible convictions. So she's met this requirement to apply for a serve. And let me just make a note here that the text flow has us ask this question directly of the person we're helping. And Kathy would prefer that we handle that indirectly. So we're not putting them on the spot so much. You know, if we already know what all their convictions are, then we don't need to ask this, you know, very specific question. If we don't have access to Alacourt, we next ask Kimberly if she has any outstanding fines, fees, or restitution owed in connection with the disqualifying conviction only. And that is sometimes referred to as legal financial obligations. And be aware, it doesn't matter if she owes money in connection with a non-disqualifying conviction. It's just the disqualifying convictions that we're concerned about. If we do have access to Alacourt, it makes more sense to look at what Alacourt says about money owed. It tends to be the more reliable source for this information. If we click on the enforcement tab for Kimberly's disqualifying conviction, we can see some good news. She's paid all monies owed. And that's always good news when you see that. It's not that common. You should find the same information in a different format if you look at the financial tab. It's good practice to check that because the enforcement tab has been known to be incomplete regarding money owed.
Hey, Becky, this is Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Your slideshow is switched back to the multi-screen view.
That's because people were not able to see the bottom of the slide.
Oh, sorry. I'm just stepped back trying to see. Thank you.
No problem, but thank you for bringing that up. It's amazing how many technical issues can come up. So we've looked that up on Alacourt. So Kimberly satisfies the financial requirement for a serve as well. Finally, the text flow script has us ask Kimberly if she has any felony charges pending. Even a pending non-disqualifying felony charge in any state or federal court would be a problem. We find no pending felony charges in Alacourt, and she tells us she has no felony charges pending in federal court or any other state court. So Kimberly has met all 4 requirements to obtain a certificate of eligibility to register to vote. The flow text, I said flow text, it's actually text flow script, provides a link to allow Kimberly to download the serve application, but it's more likely she'll end up a registered voter if we complete as much of the form as possible and mail it to her to complete and submit. You can find fillable PDF versions of the serve application on the BPP website and on the thumb drive that Kathy's provided to us. It's preferable to use the most recent version of the form. If possible, get Kimberly on the phone so that you can type in everything but her social security number and prison ID number if she has one. On the thumb drive, Kathy has provided an attachment template so that you can list pertinent information for each disqualifying felony on a separate page. Be sure to include the county of conviction. Case numbers aren't unique until you add the county name or number. Mail the package to Kimberly with sticky notes to help her complete it. Include a stamped envelope addressed to Alabama Board of Pardons and Paroles. Their address is on page 2 of the application, and supplies and stamps are included in the folder Kathy provided. Ask Kimberly to text you when she mails it to BPP and calendar about 50 days out so you can get back with her to see if she's heard from them. If she meets the requirements for a serve, the BPP is required to issue it to her within 44 days of receipt of her application. Sometimes it takes more time, however, and follow-up is crucial. Be sure to document the status of Kimberly's case in the statewide spreadsheet available in Google Drive. It will be marked dormant during the serve review, and you'll update it after Kimberly receives her serve. So the one highlighted in orange is dormant. When Kimberly receives her serve, she needs to hand carry or mail a photocopy of the serve, along with a completed paper voter registration form, to the registrar's office. The registrar will staple the copy of the serve to the voter registration form and keep it on file. Then Kimberly's voter registration form will be processed and the registrar will place her on the voter roll for her county. It's critical that Kimberly never surrender the original serve because it's her evidence the Board of Pardons and Paroles processed her serve request, and she's likely to need it if she moves to another county and registers there. So yesterday we went through all the top 3 items, and now we've just gone through a basic serve application scenario. Do y'all have any questions or comments about the serve material we just went through? Okay, I'm not hearing anything.
Becky, I
don't see-
have a quick question.
Okay.
This is Barbara. Since most of us are not lawyers, do we need to remind folks that we're not giving legal advice?
Let me turf that to Dana or Kathy if she's still here.
The way I've handled that with people that I've worked with, I've never, Barbara, it's an interesting question because I've never specifically said I am not a lawyer.
Well, I live with a lawyer. So.
Well, I understand. It's a great question. What I have said is based on what I can see in your record, this is what I think your next steps are, or words to that effect. Usually when we get to the level of a serve application, I'm on the phone with them. So it's a conversation as opposed to a text exchange. And so I'm able to establish a rapport with them and let them know I'm a League of Women Voters volunteer. I've been trained in this, and this is the advice I can give you.
Okay.
I have a related question. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Emily Heersink, and it really follows on Barbara's question. And I know it was addressed last night, but I know we have a few members who just are really hesitant. They're very worried about the potential legal ramifications if they were to recommend somebody or sort of clear them for voting, and then the person ultimately was rejected or voted, but was not actually. I don't know how that wouldn't happen because they wouldn't make it onto the rolls. But and what I heard last night was that the state of Alabama is giving leeway here because the law has recently changed. But has anyone encountered that? How can I reassure some of our members about that aspect of it?
I have not personally, and there's others on the call that do this work, gotten to the place where we thought someone could register and they could not.
Okay.
My understanding is that if in good faith, a person attempts to register to vote because they believe they can, there's no legal ramifications of that.
Okay.
I have run into the opposite, where registrars have denied the right to vote, to register in error, and we've worked, the ones we've become aware of, we've worked with those registrars to educate them.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah.
And I just wanted, the other question I had was, as you're describing a definite back and forth, and I heard you just say in response to Barbara's question again, that you'd be on the phone with the applicant by the time it gets to this point. But otherwise, the back and forth is all done through text, right?
Yes, I mean, you could be doing this at an in-person event too, but
Sure.
but yes, through text.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dana, is there anything in the chat that we need to address?
There was a comment about it being a shame that Alacourt is not available for free, which is true. It is a shame. And then a response to that, let's see, the state of Alabama depends on these kinds of things for revenue sources, and thus they love to nickel and dime the poor. That's still just a comment about the cost of Alacourt.
Okay. Let's see. So let me hit my share screen again.
I don't see hands up. Please do enter your questions in the comment, or excuse me, in the chat.
So yeah, are y'all seeing the slides again?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. We're going to go through the final scenario now. Our next example is Joe. Like Kimberly, he has no federal or out-of-state convictions, and he wasn't sure of the degree of his theft of property conviction. So we look up his record on Alacourt. Like Kimberly, he pled guilty to a theft of property 2 charge. And we confirm with Joe that his sentence is complete. He has no additional convictions. He has no felony charges pending. However, Alacourt does show money owed on his disqualifying conviction, or legal financial obligations is the more formal term. The enforcement tab shows a summary of amounts owed. In this case, the total balance owed is $604.50, but $154.50 of that is a late payment penalty, which on Alacourt is labeled the D999 amount. Joe can get a serve if he pays $450 to the court. However, if he does intend to pay off his fines, he should take steps to try to prevent the money he pays from being applied to the late payment penalty. And we will cover that in a moment. Again, it's good practice to check the financial tab as well, especially if the enforcement tab doesn't show any money owed. In this case, the 2 pages are in agreement, although it's a little harder to spot the D999 amount on this page. Remember, the D999 amount has to be subtracted from the balance shown on either of these 2 tabs before you can determine the amount that needs to be repaid before Joe is eligible for a serve. If Joe intends to pay off his fines, help him complete a 2-page form made available by the Administrative Office of Courts that he needs to file with the court where he owes money. The form states that Joe is seeking a serve and is asking a judge to order that his future payments be applied only to fines, court costs, fees, and restitution ordered at the time of sentencing. The list of disqualifying felonies on page 2 of this form is incomplete, so you may have to add the conviction. If you do that, be sure to include the statutory site, which is something we're really trying to emphasize. Go ahead and I've just lost my place here, sorry. Oh, I think I moved up. Go ahead and start the serve process at the same time in case you lose contact with Joe before he completes his paperwork. If Joe feels that he won't be able to pay the money owed for his disqualifying conviction, there is another option. Although such an application is extremely unlikely to be granted, Joe can submit a remission of fines application to the Bureau of Pardons and Paroles in an attempt to have his fines forgiven. The application is almost identical to a serve application, except the applicant has to attach a statement explaining why the BPP should forgive his fines. We wouldn't be allowed to write out Joe's justification for requesting relief, but if we asked him to explain it to us, that would help him consider his personal situation and express what is preventing him from being able to pay. He could then put that down in writing in his own words. If Joe decides to go forward with an application for remission of fines, fill out the forms along with the serve application and tell him to attach the statement setting forth in his own words why the BPP should forgive his fines. When you prepare the attachment with details on the disqualifying felony, use the template Kathy provided on the thumb drive to detail amounts owed. And if you don't have the thumb drive yet and you are going to be participating, you will get it. Mail the package to him along with properly addressed and stamped envelopes. The BPP has no time limits for review of an application for remission of fines, so bear that in mind when you calendar this case for follow-up. If past practice continues, the BPP will hold on to the serve application and the 44-day clock will not start running until the fines are either forgiven or paid. Again, document the status of Joe's case in the statewide spreadsheet available in Google Drive. If he plans to pay his fines or apply for remission, mark open, needs our follow-up under status. If he doesn't plan to pay his fines or apply for a remission, mark his status as closed legal financial obligations. So we've gone through the serve scenario where there were no impediments to obtaining a serve. And we should emphasize that if somebody meets the requirements, they're entitled to a serve. There's no discretion there. And then we've gone through Joe's scenario where he needed help with legal financial obligations. And again, if he applies for a remission of fines, that's obviously discretionary. And in 99.9% of the cases, apparently that will be denied. Do y'all have any questions about Joe's scenario or any comments?
We do have a question from Tara Bailey. She asked, are there any groups that will assist Joe in the payment of those fines? She says, I know there are groups set up to pay bail for people who are arrested.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I think I've heard it discussed. Dana, do you have any insight?
I don't know of groups that have set up funds to pay fines and fees. I think it's something that I'm interested in exploring. Now, there may be some groups that work with people, returning citizens, people who have completed their fines, their probation, their sentence and their probation and parole, who do that, but none that I'm specifically aware of. Brian, you've done this work for a while as well. Are you aware of any groups?
Yeah, I know the Alabama Nonviolent Offenders Organization does have some money and they will do that, but they don't have a whole lot of money. And so they prioritize, it makes sense, those people that the only thing missing is paying a fine or a fee. If you still have time to serve or other issues that have to resolve, they generally won't help pay the fines and fees until you're very close. So they get a quick payback that, they pay the fines and then the serve can go through. That's the only organization I'm aware of that does have some money set aside for that.
We have a question from Barbara. I'm sorry. Did you want to add to that, Dana?
No, go ahead, Jean.
We have a question from Barbara, who she asked, what is the form called for requesting payment of fines? To only go to fines and not for the D999.
Oh, popsicle.
Yeah, I told them popsicles would be next.
Okay.
Y'all, please
Somebody-
don't put yourself on mute if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Could you repeat that question, Jean?
Yes, what is the form called for requesting payment of fines to only go to fines and not for D999 penalties? I guess for late penalties.
Let me just back up in the slideshow. If I'm understanding the question correctly, I mean, there's only one BPP form. Is it the court form?
Yeah, the one you, when you mentioned that people can, that's probably it, yes.
Okay, it's got a long name. Request to reprioritize costs for, it says purposes, but it means it's supposed to be purposes of obtaining a certificate of eligibility to register to vote. And this is found on the Administrative Office of Courts website. We have not distributed this form yet, but when you get a link to the online version of this PowerPoint, you will see a link in the notes to this slide telling you where to get this form.
Thank you. It's because I can't see the form.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Old eyes and squumped up screen keeps me from reading it very clearly.
Let
And
me
okay.
flash that up in more detail.
Costs.
It's
Well,
kind of a squirrely form because it looks like a one-page form, but because there's a signature.
Like a page, yeah.
I don't see any hands up or other questions.
Okay.
Does anyone have another question for Becky or Dana? Please don't be shy. This is your chance. If it's a question you have, there will certainly be others who have the same question.
I'm not being given the opportunity to swap screens right now, so I'm hoping there's not too much cut off at the bottom. Y'all alert me if you see that problem again.
I believe it's complete, so it looks good to me.
Okay, let's see. Other barriers to obtaining a serve do exist. We haven't covered every scenario. You know, with Joe's case, we've seen what to do if financial obligations prevent someone from being eligible for a serve. And now we'll briefly cover how to respond if other serve requirements aren't met. If you can't read the bottom item, it's sentence complete, including probation or parole. If the person you're assisting can't apply for a serve now because they haven't completed their sentence for the disqualifying felony or has any felony charges pending in any court, they'll have to wait until that's resolved before they can try and get their voting rights back. Update the spreadsheet to reflect their situation, and send them a link so they can use the Campaign Legal Center's interactive tool to assess their eligibility after they've finished their sentence or after their pending felony charge is resolved. The CLC's interactive tool helps people figure out if they're ready to pursue restoration of their voting rights. It also provides a phone number for people who have questions. Sending people a link to this tool helps them to get back into the pipeline for having their rights restored An alternative would be to tell them to call Restore Your Vote after they've completed their sentence or had their pending felony charge resolved, and remind them that you are there as well to help answer their questions or help them take the next step when they're ready. They just need to text you back. The final reason a person may not be eligible for a serve involves the ineligible or pardon-only convictions where we referred to earlier. If someone can't apply for a serve because they've been impeached or convicted of treason, and I doubt anybody has run into that, they've run out of options. Pardon? Somebody said they have?
No.
If they've run out of options because the Alabama Board of Pardons and Paroles does not have authority to restore their voting rights. If they have an uncommuted death sentence, the governor has the authority to intervene, but the BPP does not. If their ineligible conviction doesn't involve impeachment, treason, or an uncommuted death sentence, they have the option of applying for a pardon with the BPP. If the person you're helping is in this category, update the spreadsheet to reflect their situation and send them a link so they can learn more about the pardon application process. If you're working with someone who's interested in exploring that route, that's beyond the scope of our normal VRR work. However, if they still have a parole officer, it's possible the parole officer can help them start that process. And Dana, I'm hoping you and I might be able to learn a little more about that next week. The link you provide will take them to the BPP website, which is well designed and has links for forms. And again, the online version of this talk has those links as well. So now we've covered the last topic, which is somebody who must use the tincture of time to cure their ineligibility for a serve. Does anybody have questions or comments on this last topic?
We do have a question from Tara, and she's asking if there might be a demo version of Alacourt where we can practice this, so that it certainly helps to run through these scenarios and practice a lot before you feel comfortable.
I'm not familiar with one. I'm not familiar with one. Is anyone familiar with it? With a demo version of Alacourt?
I'm not aware of a demo version, but some of the earlier training, they actually went into Alacourt and recorded it, and that is available. That helps you get a little bit familiar with it, but Alacourt is a tough system to learn. And when I started, you just have to start doing the best you can and ask for a lot of help, and over time you'll get comfortable with it. And you might ask Kathy. Kathy's not on anymore, but I think there should be a link to that old training that they actually logged into Alacourt and ran you through some of this, which may help a little bit.
Is that Blair's training?
Yeah, I believe that was the training Blair did.
Okay.
I think Blair did that.
Yeah, Kathy does have the links for that. And so I'll remind her that we want to make that available. What Kathy has planned, if I understand it correctly, is a special VRR section of the state website where a lot of these resources can be gathered together. And this PowerPoint will be one of those resources. So now we've covered most of the situations you're likely to run into. Remember to follow up whenever possible so that we can continue to identify and work with counties where the law is not being followed. Please take advantage of the package of supplies and resources that Kathy has provided in the blue accordion folder, assuming you have received one. And if you run out of stamps or other supplies, let her know. Stamps and supplies should be used only for the statewide VRR Warriors effort. However, the state LWV does have a limited amount of funding available to support printing VRR info, flyers, forms, cards, etc., to support a local league's voter rights and voter rights restoration drives. Finally, feel free to contact Kathy or other LWVAL members, and it sounds like Brian, you're going to be taking that over, for assistance. And Blair stands ready to advise us concerning convictions from other jurisdictions or wrongful denials of registration or serve applications. Together, we can make a difference for Alabamians with felony convictions. And that's the end.
We do have a comment from Janine that she suggests that it would be nice to have the trainer sessions within local leagues at the local league level to be led by someone who knows how to do it. What do you think about that?
Well, I think Kathy and Brian would be the people to maybe set that up. It is challenging, and I will say that, you know, what Dana was kind enough to do for me, which was to have me join her on Zoom while she actually helped an individual and several individuals, that was a game changer. And maybe not everybody can multitask the way Dana can, but it was impressive.
Yeah,
She even had a phone call from somebody who wanted to get his gun rights restored. So I was able to hear how diplomatically Dana handled that.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've had several people, that's when we get through the voting rights, they want to know about their gun rights. And I kind of try to diplomatically say, thank you, but I'm just focusing on voting rights. You'll have to check with someone else. As far as the trainer, that's good. I will talk to Kathy, and maybe we could do something rather than, I mean, local leagues would be fine, but it might be better if we set up a Zoom. And like I said, you know, Kathy would be better than I am, you know, just running us through some of the scenarios on there and everyone could see them. And then if you need more beyond that, I know early on, everything I did in Alacourt, I'd either 90% of the time I'd send it to Kathy, occasionally it would be Blair, and I'd send her something. I've looked at this record, here's what I think, what do you agree? And they tell me yes or no. So it took me quite a while to feel comfortable to be independent on this, but Kathy and Blair are there to help you. So if you do have questions about anything,
so Brian, tell us what you told the person you were helping about the delay in getting back to them. If you're running something past a scenario past Kathy or Blair, then that means that you can't respond immediately to your person that you're texting with, if it was part of a texting campaign. So you do want to let them know that you want to be sure that you're giving them the right information and that you will get back with them.
I have responded to people and just said, I need to get some help, and let them know I'm going to someone else and tell them that. The other thing that's a little bit frustrating to me, and I don't know if it's just my experience, a fairly decent number, and I'd say a quarter of them, you know, this gets drawn out over a long period because I will text them something and maybe a day or two they get back to me, and then I check and get back to them. So lots of times it's just kind of the natural time. I will just do that check, and usually I'll get a response pretty quick, so they don't even know I've gone to someone else. But if they do text me something, I have just put them in the through text, say I need to go check it, I'll get back with you and let them know. So I had another thought, now I forgot what it was with the through text. Oh, I know over time, when I first started doing this, I didn't want to vary from the through text at all. The more I've done this, the more I'm comfortable in adding my own little, you know, okay, this is where I'm at or whatever. So I think everyone will go through the same thing. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are trying to, especially on some of the questions. Some people I feel very comfortable with. I mean, when you ask them what the conviction was, they're very precise and stuff, and I have a very confident feeling the information's correct. Some are just the other. They don't, no, I don't remember, it was 20 years ago, and it might have been this or that. And those give me more pause. I'm much more conservative with them and try to check more on Alacourt and get more help before I tell them an answer, because I'm not as confident. And I'll be honest, I'm much more conservative than I think Kathy is, as far as I really don't want to tell someone to go ahead and submit an application to register to vote unless I'm very, very confident they've met all the requirements. And Kathy's willing to take a little bit more risk than I am, which is probably good.
And on the through text thing, the fact that you may get a response a day later, or 3 days later, we will get an email. If you're not familiar with through text, you will get an email advising you that you have new replies waiting, and that will tell you to go to through text and open it up. And then the other comment about the script, as we mentioned last night, we would like to revise the script to provide for more follow-through, but that's going to be a sort of a painstaking job, and we just haven't started that project yet.
I know that a number of people on today are already doing this work and have access to Alacourt and have access to through text, but not everybody does. So, and we're seeing the t-shirt again. So part of this training is to help you in in-person events and just to be familiar. But if you are interested in getting deeper into the VRR work where you get access to Alacourt and access to through text, I would assume, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, that they could reach out to you in your new role and we could get that training done and started for them.
Yeah, if we can get more people on board, yeah, the more is better. Again, the Alacourt stuff, I mean, I've sat through this training 3 or 4 times now, and a lot of people have a lot more experience than I do, and it's always interesting. I mean, even yesterday, I picked up some little tips on how to use Alacourt that I had missed before about how to do some of the sorts and stuff. So yeah, again, Alacourt is one of those things, the more you do it, the better you're going to be. And there are people out there like Robin and Kathy that have done a lot more. And I will tend to reach out to them more and ask for their advice because they're giving you better advice than I am because they have more experience. But we can set up training sessions on Alacourt and how to get more involved. Yeah, I'd like to do that.
And this instructions about this may be in the follow-up email that Kathy sends with the links and the tools. But Brian, would you be willing to put your email address in the chat in case somebody wanted to reach out directly to you? I'm quite willing for people, I'm not the expert by any means, but I'm certainly willing to help train people and show them what I've learned. Like Brian, I learned something last night from Becky's presentation, several things that I did not know before. So
I do feel pretty comfortable with Alacourt, so I will put my email in the chat. That's probably the area of this that I feel most comfortable with.
All right, you're in trouble now, Becky, because I got someone else to go to, because I say, again, I try to be probably overly conservative on checking my stuff. So I'll check and double check, and I'll email Kathy or Blair and say, hey, keep me straight on this. So there's another person I can go to. But now, having said all that, it's not, I mean, anyone on here, I'm sure, can learn it and do it and become effective in doing this. And it is a good feeling when you help these people, and especially if you start with someone that basically says, oh, I can't vote, I've got a convicted felony. Especially I've had a couple that when we've looked it up, it's not non-disqualifying, and go ahead and register right at the event we're doing, and it really is a good feeling.
I would agree. I think the majority of people I've interacted with do not have a disqualifying felony, and they can register right away. So it's just unfortunately, when the 2017 law was passed, there was really no effort to educate people. So you have people that just make an assumption that they can't vote, and they in fact can. I don't see any other questions. If you have one, please unmute and ask it. We have some time. And or if you are already doing this work and you want to share your screen and wave, people might feel good knowing how many of us there are. So there's a lot of us out here doing this work. I will tell you, it's probably the most satisfying work I do. Brian, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm just saying, yeah, feel free to call me whenever or email me if you have any questions. And just give me time to call Blair or Kathy to get the right answer.
Okay. Okay, well, Becky, we have finished in just under an hour. So can we open up for discussion or questions or comments. I don't want to leave anybody with any questions.
It looks like everybody's ready to enjoy the rest of their Friday. Oh, wait.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any further
Okay.
questions. in
I think
chat.
Janine has a question.
Okay.
I agree with Brian and everyone who's done any of this work at all. It is very, very rewarding. When we first started making the telephone calls just to try and contact felons who had been released who might be eligible, a lot of times the number would reach a family member or even a cousin. And when we explained what it was about, they were always so grateful that we reached out to them. And they said, we'll get his number or her number and have them call you back. Or sometimes they would just give us the direct number. And it really is gratifying to be able to help people. They said, we had no idea. And this was a comment I put last night in the chat. When they are released from jail, the people in authority don't give them any information about their ability to restore their voting rights. They get zero information about that. And I was wondering if there's a project that the State League might want to take up where we could get information to people in prison while they're still in prison to let them know that if they have a certain kind of felony, once they've served their time, their voter rights can be restored. And so that they might have something to look forward to, and then how to even stay in touch with them. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know about going into the jails and doing that, but there is a lack of information for most felons and for most people who go to jail. And as you can see by how complex all of this is, if we think it's complex, you can imagine the average person, how it feels to them. And especially if it's someone who has a lower education level that gets caught up in the system. So there may be other avenues we can use to get the information to the people who need it the most, because they're not getting it from the criminal justice system, is what I want to say. And thank you so much for this. This has been amazing.
Just
Thank
as
all of
a,
y'all for participating.
yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much for your interest. This is a slightly off topic, but if you look at the application for absentee voting, the last reason is I am currently incarcerated. So even the Secretary of State's office recognizes that there are people currently in jails and prisons who can vote because they don't have a disqualifying felony. So you can vote from prison if your felony is not disqualifying. And I think there's a lack of education about that as well.
Exactly. Nobody's going around in the prison saying, you know, y'all can vote absentee. There's no
Well,
telling you that.
there are a couple of organizations that I think are trying to do that work.
Right. But that's new, and it's definitely not widespread. And that's why this project is so important. We're reaching people who may not have ever been reached by anyone else.
Right. Right. Okay. I see. Valerie, you've put a comment in the chat. I don't know if you want to make that comment out loud, or I can refer. It doesn't appear to be a question.
Are you referring to Vicky's?
I'm sorry. Maybe yeah, makes perfect. Vicky, I'm sorry. Okay. She may not be here anymore. All right. Well, I am going to assume that we are finished, and yay for Becky for getting through us on time, and everybody look out for your emails. Okay. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dana.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Thank you, Jean.
Yes, thank you, Becky and Dana.
Yeah. All right. Take care.